On December 2, 1979, at around 9 a.m., staff at the Travelodge Motor Inn in New York City made a call to the nearby fire department. The call was made as a result of the personnel discovering significant smoke inside room 417. A "Do Not Disturb" sign was hanging from the door latch of the room, which had been rented by someone called Carl Wilson. Since November 29, 2 naked female bodies were discovered by the firefighters on 2 different beds. Prior to their deaths, the women were brutalized, and their murderer burned their bodies. Both women's hands had been severed, and the killer had also beheaded them. The missing body parts were never found. A later autopsy revealed that both women had been tortured and sexually assaulted while still alive for several days. Dide Gudazi, an immigrant who worked as a prostitute, was identified shortly afterward. The other victim remains unidentified and is estimated to be aged between 16 and 22. In a 2009 interview, Cottingham admitted to the murders and claimed that he severed the heads and hands of the victims to prevent their identification, as he was acquainted with Gudarzi and had been seen with her in a bar the night before. And remember Dide Gudarzi, because something about her will be revealed in the video, and this will give you goosebumps. The serial killer in this video has a distinctive character. This killer was devoting great effort to killing each victim. He was torturing and sexually assaulting his victims. He was committing heinous things to them to make it difficult to identify them, such as mutilating their faces or burning their bodies. The serial killer was an ordinary person who had a family, a job, and a home. From looking at him and dealing with him, you would say that it is impossible for him to be a murderer. And one of the strangest things in this case is the many trials that this criminal went through, and in several states. In every trial, in every investigation session, he confessed to a heinous crime. Some of the crimes he admitted to committing were prior, unsolved crimes. Richard Francis Cottingham. Richard is an American serial killer and rapist who murdered at least 100 young women and girls in New York, New Jersey between 1967 and 1980. He was nicknamed the New York Ripper, the Torso Killer, and the Times Square Killer. Richard Cottingham was born on November 25, 1946. The first of 4 children in Mott Haven. Mott Haven is a high-density and mainly low-income neighborhood. Like most neighborhoods in New York City, the vast majority of households are renter-occupied of the Bronx in New York City. In 1948, Cottingham's family moved to Dumont, New Jersey, one of the best places to live in New Jersey. And in 1956, they moved to River Vale, New Jersey. River Vale is a township in Bergen County, another nice and warm place to live in. In River Vale, Richard Cottingham was only 10 years old by that time when he began his fascination with bondage pornography, which was something crazy. According to Cottingham, the whole idea of bondage had aroused and fascinated me since I was very young. Cottingham had a close relationship with his mother growing up, but reportedly had difficulty making friends as a teenager. In 1964, he graduated from Pascack Valley High School in Hillsdale, New Jersey. His graduation yearbook stated that Cottingham was a member of the school's cross, country, and track team. After graduation, Cottingham worked for Metropolitan Life, one of the largest life insurance companies in the world, where his father was a vice president, starting in the mailroom at the firm's Manhattan headquarters, and eventually became a mainframe computer operator upon taking computer courses. In October 1966, 2 years after he became a computer operator for the Blue Cross Blue Shield Association, another life insurance company, where he worked for 14 years until 1980. During these years, Richard got married and gave birth to 3 children, 2 boys and 1 girl. And at the same time, he was committing crimes. At Blue Cross, Richard worked in an office with Rodney Alcala, a fugitive child molester and serial killer who lived in New York under the alias John Berger. Neither man claimed to have been aware of the other, nor is there any evidence they were familiar with each other before their respective arrests. Cottingham was arrested on several charges throughout his killing spree. Police were not aware of his murders at the time, nor were they aware that a serial killer was active. On October 3, 1969, Cottingham was charged and convicted of drunk driving in New York City and was fined $50. On August 21, 1972, he was charged and convicted of shoplifting at a Stearns department store in Paramus, New Jersey, and was sentenced to pay a $50 fine or 10 days in jail. On September 4, 1973, He was arrested in New York City for robbery, oral sex, and sexual abuse on the complaint of a prostitute and her pimp. Neither complainant appeared in further proceedings, and the case was dismissed. On March 12, 1974, Cottingham was arrested in New York City for robbery and unlawful imprisonment on the complaint of another prostitute. Once again, the victim did not appear in further proceedings, and the case was dismissed. Cottingham targeted petite blondes in their late teens, mid-20s, and most often prostitutes. However, he targeted minors, as well as this brutal, did not care about how young they were. He would solicit them somehow, drug them by spiking their drinks with Tuinal in bars, and take them somewhere secluded, usually to a motel where he would bind them, gag them with duct tape, brutally rape, torture, and stab them before killing them by strangling them with a ligature. To make the authorities struggle to identify the victims, he would sometimes cut off their heads and hands and take the parts with him. Among his known methods of torture were severely biting and scratching their nipples, cutting around the breasts, and threat with a toy gun. However, this gun played an important role in arresting him. He would also make his victims call him Master. After killing them, he would take their jewelry and other personal belongings. After the crimes, he went to great lengths to cover them up, sometimes hiding the bodies in secluded locations or even setting them and the room they were in on fire. Mary Ann Della Sala was 17 years old when she disappeared in 1967. She was living at 150 Hobart Street in Hackensack, Bergen County, New Jersey. She was a senior at Hackensack High School who worked part-time after school at a grocery store to help with family finances. The ShopRite at 330 Essex Street in Hackensack, to be exact. At the end of her shift, at 9 p.m. on January 24, 1967, she was reportedly offered a ride by a female coworker, but Marianne declined because it was a nice night and she chose to walk home instead. Marianne left the store and headed home. She never got there. The employee ended up taking another coworker, and on her way back, she said she did not see Marianne along her normal walking route and assumed Mary had already arrived home. Marianne went missing, wearing a heavy light blue sweater and a tweed jacket with tight-fitting tan slacks, blue shoes, and a blue headband. She was wearing a shoulder-strap handbag and was also wearing her boyfriend's high school class ring. Banks of the Passaic River in Hawthorne, behind a municipal sewage treatment plant. He spotted something floating in the river. It was the body of Mary Ann. She had been strangled. Police have concluded that she was killed elsewhere and then thrown into the river. The exact cause of death was not determined. Mary Ann still had her pocketbook with her when she was found. It was somehow attached to her sweater. She had not been robbed. There was apparently something ritualistically sexual about the appearance of the body, according to witnesses. However, there was no other sign of sexual activity. On February 16, 1968, a Long Island dance teacher, Diane Martin Cusick, was found dead in a car parked at the Green Acres Mall. The mother and dance teacher and never returned. She left behind a 3-year-old daughter. Diane was found in the back seat of her car, a 1961 Plymouth Valiant, outside the Green Acres Mall in Valley Stream, New York, with adhesive tape around her mouth and neck. She had been beaten, raped, and strangled. Her hands had defense wounds. Near the Green Acres Mall, there was a drive-in theater that Cottingham frequently visited. Cottingham approached her while pretending to be a mall security guard. Cusick's daughter, Arlene Altman, now 58, spoke at the June news conference where Cottingham was charged. "I never thought I'd see this day. I had given up, but all these people got justice for me and my mother.
I never thought I'd see this day. I had given up. All these people got justice for me and for my mother."
Irene Blaze was reported missing on April 7, 1969. The following day, April 8, she was discovered down in 4 feet of water in Saddle River, New Jersey, strangled with the chain from a crucifix she was wearing. Keep in mind that Cottingham was only 23 old at that time. He confessed that he saw Blass shopping in Hackensack, New Jersey, and convinced her to join him for a drink. Taking a cab to another location, Cottingham and Blass spent some time together, after which Cottingham offered to bring Blass back to the bus station. He then drove Blass to a remote location against her will before raping and killing her. His awful actions did not stop as he kept doing this behind his family, a person with two faces, a psychopath by all means. His next victim was a 16-year-old Denise Velasca. On July 13, 1969, at approximately 8 p.m., Denise left her residence on Bergen Line Avenue in Gloucester, New Jersey, on her way to meet friends at 11 p.m. Denise was scheduled to be back home, but she never arrived. At around 9 p.m., Dennis's body was found on the side of Westminster Place in Saddlebrook Township in New Jersey on July 14. According to Cottingham, Velasca was walking down the side of the road when he pulled up next to her and offered her a ride. Shortly after, he drove to the parking lot of his former school, where he forced Velasca to perform oral sex on him. Dissatisfied with her sexual inexperience, Cottingham murdered her. On August 9, 1974, Lorraine Marie Kelly and Marianne Pryor planned to go shopping at the Garden State Plaza in Paramus, New Jersey. Kelly's boyfriend left the two off at a bus stop. They intended to hitchhike from there in a wooded location close to the Ridgemont Gardens complex in Montvale, New Jersey. On August 14, both of their bodies were found. They were naked and bound to one another at the wrists and ankles, while lying face down next to each other. Both had been beaten and raped. The ligature marks on their necks suggested that they had likely been strangled as well. Both also had cigarette burns on their flesh. Cottingham was convicted of both of their murders on April 27, 2021. In court, Cottingham admitted to kidnapping the girls, then tying them up and raping them both in a motel room. And he killed them by drowning them in the bathtub. On October 7, 1974, the 15-year-old Lisa Thomas left her home and walked to the Nanuet Mall at 3:30 p.m., intending to buy a blouse. About 700 feet from her home, Lisa's body was found by her father the following morning in the woods behind the mall. Lisa's father stated, "I almost got a heart attack seeing my dear daughter in that situation, blindfolded with a crimson rag that she had in her purse, and her head had been bashed in." Marianne Jean Rayner was discovered on May 15, 1980, at the Seville Hotel in New York City. Investigators discovered that Cottingham had cut her throat and removed both of her breasts. Cottingham had left the breasts on the headboard of the bed. Rayner's body had also been set on fire as part of the perpetrator's attempt to get rid of evidence. In the early morning hours of May 22, 1980, Cottingham picked up 18-year-old prostitute Leslie Ann Odell, who was soliciting on the corner of Lexington Avenue and 25th Street in Manhattan. They checked into the Hasbrook Heights Quality Inn in room 117. Cottingham offered to give Odell a massage, and she rolled onto her stomach. Straddling her back, Cottingham drew a knife and put it to her throat as he snapped a pair of handcuffs on her wrists. He began torturing her, nearly biting off one of her nipples. She later testified that he said, "You have to take it." The other girls did. "You have to take it too. You're a whore, and you have to be punished." At one point, Odell reached under the bed for a fake gun that Cottingham had threatened her with, thinking it was real, and attempted to shoot Cottingham with it. When it did not fire, Cottingham came at her with a knife. She screamed, "Oh, God, no." The screams brought motel employees to the room, and they summoned police. Cottingham was arrested in the hallway at gunpoint. When arrested, he had handcuffs, a leather gag, 2 slave collars, a switchblade knife, replica pistols, and a stockpile of prescription pills. Richard is still alive nowadays, age 77, serving multiple life sentences in New Jersey prisons. In 2009, decades after his first 5 murder convictions, Cottingham told a journalist that he had committed at least 80 to 100 perfect murders of women in various regions of the United States. Didi Godarzi's daughter had been meeting up with Richard for 5 years to know the story beyond her mother's death, but he was barely talking about the case, just like when he talked with the detectives.
Jennifer Weiss has been meeting with Cottingham in prison for 5 years.
It's not threatening, and he looks like a jolly old Santa.
And I could have met her. She could have been alive, you know, if he didn't take her life.
Robert Anzalotti, the main detective who was responsible for investigating Richard, described him as one of the most awful serial killers ever, as he never showed guilt for what he did.
Richard always refused to tell me when his first homicide occurred. He never wanted me to know that timeline of when he started to kill. There is not a chance in hell that Richard Cottingham is going to come to some epiphany and say, I may die soon, so let me cleanse my soul.